That's it, I've just always wanted to do that. Hello and welcome. As you can tell by the title, I'm the obsessed movie man, O.M.M. You will believe a man can fly. That is what the makers of the 1978 Superman film set out to do, to prove without a doubt that the man you saw on screen was indeed flying. Superman was an ambitious project because a superhero picture like this had never been done before. There were superhero films and there were Superman serials, but in terms of showing all of the powers of one of, if not the, most iconic superhero was almost unheard of. But with innovative special effects, believable actors, and a director who knew what he was doing, Superman managed to make this reviewer believe that the man in the title role was flying. Superman is a retelling of the origin of the DC comic book character of the same name. The planet Krypton is doomed and scientist Jor-El is... Wait a minute. Is that Marlon Brando as Jor-El? What the hell is he doing in a comic book movie? Maybe it's because Mario Puzo is writing the script, so Brando had faith. Or maybe the director, Richard Donner, made Brando an offer he couldn't refuse. Enough of my horrible Godfather jokes. Back to the story. The planet is doomed and scientist Jor-El sends his only son to the planet Earth where the Kent family raises him. The boy grows up as Clark Kent, and can't help but feel that he is different. He's incredibly strong, very fast, and magically has the voice of Christopher Reeve while possessing the body of Jeff East. Clark goes off to find out who he is, taking a crystal from his ship with him and heading north. Why he goes north, I have no idea, but he makes it to the Arctic and throws the crystal into the snow where it transforms into the Fortress of Solitude. Just go with it. Clark is then contacted by Jor-El, the Great and Powerful, who explains everything to him and then trains him to become Superman. He makes his way to Metropolis and gets a job as a mild-mannered reporter. So that no one assumes who he is, he pretends to be extremely awkward and timid, especially around reporter Lois Lane. Superman finally does reveal himself to the people of Metropolis, saving Lois, who in turn becomes captivated with him. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor, the greatest criminal mind of our time, is hatching a nefarious plot to destroy California using the San Andreas Fault. He's going to launch a nuclear missile into the fault, thus sinking California into the ocean. There will only be miles and miles of desert left, desert that Lex now owns. The value of the land will go up and Lex will become immensely wealthy. Can Superman save the day and stop— Oh, who am I kidding? You all know the answer to that. He's Superman! For an origin story, it's handled very well. We spend a decent amount of time on Krypton with Jor-El, then we see Clark's life on the Kent farm, and finally we see how he is in Metropolis as both Clark Kent and Superman. We don't follow every single solitary detail about Clark's life. We see the key moments that tell us everything we need to know about the character in precise chronological order. It's not like we randomly flash from him being an adult to a child, then an adult, then to a teenager, then back to a child for no reason. That would be too disjointed and add relatively little to the overall story, as if it was just used for artistic style and nothing else. Was that a jab at Man of Steel? Yes. Yes, it was. The acting in the film is really well done, and almost all the actors are perfect representations of the characters they are playing. Some of it is over the top, but in an intentional way that does not feel distracting. It's kind of like how J.K. Simmons played J. Jonah Jameson in Spider-Man. The character was very cartoonish, but he worked well within the universe of the film. The same thing applies with some of the characters in this movie. It has a very comic book feel, which is a crucial part of any comic book movie. And with that said, it's fun. The characters are a lot of fun and very entertaining to watch. They're very animated, very likable, and just seem very human. Ha! But that's so boring. Why can't we have nothing but expositional speeches about what it means to be a hero? And why must the hero smile? This must be taken deadly serious if it's considered to be good. In my opinion, which is the right one? Christopher Reeve is the ideal representation of Superman and Clark Kent. He is the typical Boy Scout with a heart of gold. His ideals are as strong as his powers, and unlike Batman, who is more interesting than Bruce Wayne, I find myself thinking that Clark Kent is more interesting than Superman. It's one of those instances where the secret identity is almost more importantly portrayed than the identity of the hero. Clark is bumbling, awkward, and very mild, and the ideals that motivate Superman were instilled upon him while he was Clark Kent. The character of Clark is very lively, and while he is a dork, you find yourself rooting for him throughout the film. The other actors do a good job playing their characters as well, such as Marlon Brando as Jor-El, Margot Kidder as Lois Lane, Mark McClure as Jimmy Olsen, and Jackie Cooper as Perry White. All of them were fantastic and added a ton of individuality and wit into their roles. Then we move on to Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. If you asked anyone on the street to describe Lex Luthor in both appearance and profession, you'd probably get something along the lines of, he's a mad scientist, or a businessman, or the leader of the Legion of Doom. Oh, and that he's bald. In this film, Luthor is none of these things. I take that back, he is bald at the end, but that's beside the point. Now you're probably thinking I'm going to bash this character because he has little in common with Luthor of the comics, when in reality, I ended up really liking this character, and it's Gene Hackman's portrayal that sells it for me. No, he's not traditional Lex Luthor, but there's something about this character that works well within the story of the film. The intelligence is still there, so it's still a mind versus muscle conflict. He does have a pretty good scheme and shows that he is willing to do anything to achieve his end goal. And like I said before, Hackman's portrayal shines through, showing a cocky and temperamental genius who realizes that the only person who stands in his way is Superman. So I think Hackman works fine as the character of Luthor, possessing an intimidating demeanor and a wicked sense of humor. And as a side note, during the 70s, Luthor in the comics wasn't like he is now. He was still a scientist, but he was corny and he wasn't a millionaire. So I think the depiction is not too far off from what he was then. Also, Hackman fits within the tone of the film, unlike a certain interpretation who does not fit with the feel of the film he is in, and possesses no charm nor charisma to keep people invested other than to continuously annoy them to no end. Which is even more annoying when the filmmakers had the opportunity to make him like the more recognizable Luthor of the present. The effects, even to this day, still hold up pretty well. The exterior shots of Krypton were miniatures built by Derek Meddings, who also did work on some Hammer horror films, as well as being nominated for his work on Moonraker in 1979. The appearance of Krypton alone was a marvel to gaze at. The crystal look really sells the idea of an advanced society built by more progressive scientific beings. I think making everything white was a pretty good idea as well, showing the purity of Krypton as opposed to General Zod, Ursa, and Nom, who are all dressed in black, making it clear they are the villains. Meddings would end up receiving a Special Achievement Award for his work on Superman. Of course, we can't have a Superman film without him flying, which proved to be the most difficult thing to film. There were many ideas on how to do this, ranging from launching a Superman model out of a cannon, using a remote-controlled Superman, and animation. In the end, there were a couple of different techniques used. In the documentary The Magic Behind the Cape, it's explained that Christopher Reeve was attached to wires for landing and takeoff shots. He would be suspended from a tower crane that was 200 feet tall. The wires would have to be painted out if they were shown on camera. Blue screens were also used, primarily when Superman is flying towards or away from the cameras, as well as front projection for the scene when Superman flies with Lois. The end result was astounding to watch. There were a few times when one could tell it was a blue screen, but overall, the effects were extraordinary and they still hold up well today. One of my favorite scenes out of any superhero movie is still the scene when Superman flies with Lois through Metropolis. The scene is filled with awe, wonder, and romance that captures the allure of flying. Of course, it also helped to have great acting that convinced me, as well as many others, that the individuals that were on screen were really flying. Another strong aspect of the film is the romance between Superman and Lois Lane. I've always looked at this film as a romanticized superhero story with colorful characters and beautiful visuals, but what really does sell it is the romance itself. It's basically a love triangle with Clark hoping that he could gain the affection of Lois as this mild-mannered reporter, but at the same time realizing that she will always prefer the powerful and confident Superman. If there is a downside to the relationship, it's because of one scene that appears in the extended edition of the film in which a young Lois Lane witnesses a teenage Clark Kent use his powers. So Clark is about 18 in this scene, and let's be fair and say that Lois is 6 to 8 in the shot. 12 years passed and Clark goes to work for the Daily Planet at age 30, whereas Lois would be somewhere between 18 and 20. That's a little creepy there, Clark. You're putting Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia to shame. The only few problems I had with the film consist of nitpicks, such as scenes in the movie that defy the laws of physics, and the two major ones, which are the missiles and Superman spinning the world backwards. It's been brought up countless times that Superman should be fast enough to catch both missiles before they hit their targets. In terms of the context of the story, this plot hole didn't bother me too much, as it did provide, as Luthor calls it, double jeopardy to the story. The scene I did have a problem with, to an extent, was Superman spinning the world back in time to prevent Lois's death. Despite the fact that this is not how time travel would theoretically work, It seemed to me that there was no point to it. Lois gets killed, Superman cries, then he reverses time. There was no consequence for the choice that he made. He just decides to bring Lois back from the dead, and that's that. Screw what Brando says about interfering with human history. Although it did bother me initially, I ended up letting it slide because I was still invested in what was going on. I cared about these characters so much, I wanted to see Superman find a way to save the day. Superman inspires hope and finding a way to save human lives. Yes, the character is pretty basic, but sometimes there's nothing wrong with a basic character as long as they are likable and done well. There may not be a lot to the character, but after seeing Reeves' portrayal, I ended up liking the guy and became emotionally invested in this dramatic point in his life. I grew to like him so much that I was willing to overlook this ridiculous way he saved the day. It's incredibly easy to make fun of this film and Superman in general, but the general good feelings that the character and the overall movie evokes in oneself is so great that it makes you go along with it and enjoy the ride that it takes you on. Superman is a movie that has astonishing effects, a good story, wonderful acting, and a director who, like Superman, inspires awe and wonder in people, specifically those interested in film. It is my favorite comic book movie, and I will most likely be watching it again very soon. Thanks, this is an O.M.M review. This is O.M.M, signing out.